Welcome back to our channel. Hope you all doing well, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's begin with another day of aviation miracle. Flight 327 and Airbus A321 stood at gate C5 of Dubai International, bathed in the soft orange hue of the morning sun. For most on board, it was just another routine hop across the Arabian Sea to Mumbai, 2 hours of calm skies and coffee service. But for Captain Aarav Khanna, this was more than routine. He had logged over 9,000 flying hours, yet every takeoff still carried the same quiet tension. Beside him sat First Officer Leena Thomas Sharp, methodical, and just 27. This was her 80th flight as a co-pilot, and she was determined to make it flawless. As the passengers boarded, the cabin filled with a mix of sleepy chatter, the rustle of newspapers, and the faint aroma of brewed coffee. Among them were 168 Souls families, businessmen, and a few tourists capturing selfies through the window seats. 08:47 a.m. pushback clearance granted. Ground crew waved goodbye. Engines spooled up with a deep, controlled hum. Inside the cockpit, checklists rolled like a rhythm. Engine mode selector, normal. Bleed on, takeoff data set. They taxied to runway 30R, a light crosswind, clear skies, perfect conditions. 08:56 a.m. takeoff clearance. Thrust set, Aarav called out. The aircraft accelerated down the runway, vibration rising through the yoke. What? Rotate! And just like that, Flight 327 lifted into the air, climbing toward 34,000 feet. For the next 40 minutes, everything was textbook. Cabin crew began service, autopilot maintained cruise, and the world below shimmered like molten glass. The Arabian Sea stretched endlessly, calm, silent, indifferent. Then came the first warning. 9:37 a.m. cruising altitude, 34,000 feet. A small vibration rippled through the fuselage. Aarav frowned, checked the ECAM screen, no fault indicated. Probably light turbulence, he muttered. But Leena noticed a strange reflection outside a dense, dark cluster of dots in the distance. The sound was brutal, a rapid-fire barrage of thuds, followed by a violent shudder through both engines. The right engine's RPM spiked, then dropped. A loud boom echoed through the cabin as flame briefly flashed out of the right intake. Passengers screamed. Cabin lights flickered. ECAM alert, ENG-2 fail, ENG-1 stall. Mayday, 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 this is Flight 327. Dual engine failure, altitude 340. Aarav's voice remained steady, but his hands moved faster than thought. Speed, 280 knots. Maintain glide. Leena executed memory items. Thrust levers idle, ATHR off, engine master switches confirm of, then on again. No response. Silence. Both engines were dead. A321s are designed to glide roughly 15 nautical miles per 5,000 feet. At 34,000 feet, they had around 100 nautical miles to find a place to ditch, over an ocean with no land in sight. 09:38 am total power loss. APU failed to start. RAT deployed automatically. A small wind turbine under the belly, providing limited hydraulic and electrical power. The cockpit dimmed. Screens flickered to backup mode. No more autopilot. No more navigation aids beyond the horizon compass. Leena, calculate glide distance. Where's the nearest coastline? Aarav asked. She checked distance to Mumbai FIR boundary at 80 nautical miles. We won't make it. Aarav inhaled slowly. Then we aim for the sea-controlled ditching. Cabin crew received the emergency call. Chief Purser Aisha held her composure as she briefed passengers. Brace positions. Life vests. Remain calm. The words came out steady, but her heart raced. Through the window, both engines now stood. Eerily still, only the whisper of wind cutting across the fuselage in the cabin. Fear began to spread like static. Mothers clutched their children. Businessmen whispered prayers. Yet amid the chaos, one flight attendant, young trainee Bilal, quietly moved row to row, showing passengers how to inflate vests. His hands trembled, but he smiled at each one. We're okay. Captain's in control. So 9:45 am altitude 20,000 feet. Descent rate 1,800 famin. Aarav radioed again. Mayday, mayday, flight 327. Dual engine loss. Gliding over Arabian Sea. Request rescue coordination. ATC acknowledged faintly static crackling. They began alerting Indian and Emirati rescue centers. Coast Guard vessels were scrambled. Leena ran the ditching checklist. Flap, set, gear, up, cabin. Prepare for impact. Every movement in the cockpit was deliberate. Mechanical, but the silence around it made it surreal. The hum of the wind was now louder than the aircraft's own systems. 0952 m altitude 10,000 feet. Distance to coast, 90 nautical miles. Captain. Seas calm. Winds 10 knots southwest. If we go in shallow angle, we can hold her together. Aarav nodded. Let's give them something to survive. Cabin crew buckled in. Passengers braced. The aircraft's nose lifted slightly, wings level. Aarav trimmed for the perfect glide. His eyes fixed on the gray-blue horizon that now crept closer every second. Outside, the sky was painfully beautiful sun glinting over calm waters. It didn't look like a place of disaster. It looked like peace. 9:58 a.m., altitude 5,000 feet. Leena whispered, Captain. Rat voltage dropping. Copy. Manual control engaged. Every second now felt like eternity. The aircraft had lost almost all power, but its spirit and that of the crew refused to die. At 3,000 feet, Aarav looked once more through the windshield. We'll aim for that patch, smoother waves, less foam. He adjusted pitch slight flare, controlled sink. Brace, brace, echoed through the cabin. And then the sea rose to meet them. Impact wasn't a crash. It was a violent landing that shook bones. Spray engulfed the cockpit. Alarms blared. Panels rattled loose. But somehow, miraculously, the fuselage stayed intact. The aircraft skipped once, then settled, half floating, half sinking. Flight 327 successfully ditched. Aarav's voice calm and cracked. Cabin crew, evacuate. Passengers, stay together. We made it. The ocean that had nearly claimed 168 lives now carried them gently, waves slapping against torn, wings as yellow life vests dotted the blue expanse. They were alive. But survival at sea had just begun. The aircraft floated in eerie stillness, half submerged, half breathing. The sea hissed around it, sunlight flashing off torn metal and broken wings. Inside, the passengers sat frozen. Shock had silenced even the cries. Captain Aarav Khanna's hands were still on the yoke when the reality hit. They had made it down alive. He took a slow breath, released the control column, and turned to Leena. We did it. Now let's keep them alive. 10:03 a.m. aircraft stable, floating tail first. Both engines were gone, right wing torn, but the fuselage was miraculously intact. The ocean surface was calm, a rare mercy. Aarav hit the PA switch. This is the captain speaking. The aircraft is stable. Evacuate through overwing exits and main doors. Life vests on. Stay together. His tone measured. Calm worked like medicine. Fear began to fade into action. Cabin crew leapt into motion. Chief Purser Aisha opened the forward door, inflated the slide raft. Go, 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 she called, pushing calm through chaos. The salty air hit her face as the raft bounced on the waves below. Passengers moved, some trembling, some helping others. Bilal, the trainee attendant, cut tangled seatbelts, guiding an old man who could barely stand. Another attendant, Sana, helped two toddlers into the raft before jumping herself. Inside the cockpit, Leena pulled the emergency locator transmitter ELT activated. It would send a distress ping to any nearby rescue unit. But the ocean was vast. Captain, she said, checking the portable radio. Signal's weak. We might be out of range. Aarav nodded. Then we trust the satellite beacon. Help's coming, it has to. 10:11 a.m. All passengers evacuated. 168 souls alive. The aircraft's tail began to sink slightly, water seeping through the cargo hold. Aarav took one last look at the panel silent screens. Burnt wires, his partner in steel and code, now quiet. He unstrapped, grabbed the emergency kit, and stepped out onto the wing. The sea stretched endlessly blue, cruel, infinite. Behind him, life rafts clustered together, small yellow dots in a canvas of water. Captain, someone called. It was Aisha waving from the nearest raft. We've got everyone, some injured but stable. He nodded, jumped into the cold embrace of the sea, and swam to her. The water was shockingly cold despite the sun. Salt burned his eyes, but the sight before him steadied his heart. Every raft was filled, and every voice was alive. 10:24 a.m. temporary formation established. Leena used a whistle to gather the rafts together. Ropes tied, they formed a floating circle, a fragile island of hope in a merciless sea. Aarav climbed in, dripping, exhausted but focused. "Everyone okay?" A chorus of weak nods, shivering smiles, tears. "Listen," he said, raising his voice above the waves. "Rescue will come. We activated the beacon, but until then we stick together. No panic, no drifting." He looked around. Mothers holding children, an elderly couple clutching hands, cabin crew distributing first aid kits, water pouches. This wasn't chaos anymore, it was survival. The sun climbed high, reflecting like fire off the sea. The adrenaline had faded. Now came thirst, heat, and quiet dread. Some passengers prayed, some just stared at the horizon, waiting for a sound, any sound. Leena checked her watch. "It's been an hour." Aarav shaded his eyes. "They'll find the beacon. It's only a matter of time." But deep down, he knew the Arabian Sea could swallow signals like whispers. Suddenly, a faint noise, a helicopter. Everyone turned. For a heartbeat, hope surged. But the sound faded. Just the wind. Tears glistened in the eyes of a woman clutching her child. "Will they come?" she whispered. Bilal, the youngest among them, answered softly, "Yes, ma'am, because the captain is still here." His words carried. One by one, passengers straightened their backs. Fear gave way to fragile courage. Miles away, the distress beacon finally reached the Indian Coast Guard Maritime Center. ELT signal detected possible ditching. Coordinates 200 nautical miles west of Mumbai. Within minutes, 2 rescue aircraft and a patrol vessel were scrambled. Back on the rafts, the sun-scorched skin and lips. Aisha tore pieces of her uniform to shade small children. Aarav rationed the water pouches. Just 1 sip each every hour. Leena rewired the hand flare launcher, testing the trigger. "We'll need it soon," she said. "Once we hear the chopper, we signal." 1:42 p.m., the first bird of hope. A distant shape appeared, faint, metallic, glinting in the blue. At first, no one believed it. Then the sound grew, thump, thump, thump. "Helicopter!" someone shouted. Flare fired. A bright orange streak cut through the sky. The rescue chopper banked sharply toward them. Cheers erupted. People cried, hugged strangers, shouted prayers. But Aarav stayed composed because one rescue chopper meant only initial contact. They still had to survive until boats arrived. "Keep the rafts together," he called. "Stay linked, waves are picking up." The helicopter hovered, dropping supply canisters water. Emergency flares, locator die. The sea had turned rougher now, waves slapping against the rafts. The pilot inside the chopper gave a thumbs up through the open door. Loudspeaker crackled. "Stay calm. Coast Guard vessel en route ETA 2 hours. 2 hours. For the survivors, it felt like forever. Wind picked up, waves rising. One raft began to drift. Bilal jumped into the water, rope in hand, towing it back. Aisha screamed, "Bilal, stay close!" He kicked hard, arm over arm, until he caught the rope again. Everyone pulled together. The raft returned. Cheers broke out again. They weren't just survivors. They were a team now. Low and heavy, the deep rumble of engines. Over the horizon, a white and red Coast Guard vessel emerged. Slicing through waves, a roar of relief rolled across the survivors. Aarav closed his eyes, whispered, "We made it." By 4:10 p.m., rescue divers began lifting passengers onto boats. Children first, then the elderly, then the crew. When the last passenger climbed aboard, Captain Aarav stood on the raft, scanning the horizon one last time, the tail of Flight 327 still floating in the distance. Sunlight glinting off the letters Hope Air. He saluted the aircraft softly. "You kept them safe." Then he stepped onto the rescue boat, drenched, trembling, but undefeated. 050 p.m. All 168 passengers rescued alive. News agencies would later call it the miracle on the Arabian Sea. But for those who lived it, it wasn't just a miracle. It was teamwork, discipline, humanity. As the sun set behind the waves, Aarav looked back at the same sea that had tried to take them, now glowing like liquid gold. He whispered, "They didn't wait for heroes, they became them." The sun was already setting when the first rescue helicopters appeared above. The dark Arabian Sea, the A321 lay half submerged, wings partly torn, but the fuselage still floating a hollow shell that refused to sink. Inside, soaked passengers clung to the aisle seats as crew. Members guided them out toward rafts. Every command was calm, rehearsed, deliberate. "Keep moving, follow the light sticks," shouted First Officer Leena. Her voice cracked from exhaustion, but she never let it show. Captain Aarav Khanna stood waist-deep in water at the rear door, ensuring no one was left inside. The emergency lighting flickered weakly, the smell of burning oil mixed with salt water filling the cabin. He looked back once more. The aircraft that had carried 168 souls now resembled a dying whale, its tail sinking slowly beneath gray waves. By 5:42 p.m., the last life raft had been cut loose. 30 minutes later, Coast Guard C-130s spotted the survivors drifting in, clusters across the calm evening sea. The sea was deceptively quiet now. No lightning, no turbulence, only the rhythmic slap of water against rubber. But the silence carried its own weight. Some passengers whispered prayers, others sat numb, staring at the horizon. Leena checked her watch every few minutes. "They'll be here soon," she told the group, voice steady. She knew every second mattered. Water temperature was dropping fast. In the next raft, a teenage boy began to cry softly. The cabin crew chief, Priya, reached over, wrapped him in her jacket, and said, "We're not done yet. You'll see your mother tonight." Captain Aarav, seated in another raft, kept scanning the sky. He saw the faint lights of the Coast Guard helicopter. First, a white flicker far to the north. "Rescue inbound," he radioed on the waterproof handheld. The relief in his voice was quiet but unmistakable. When the first searchlight hit the water, survivors began waving torn seat cushions as reflectors. The helicopter dipped low, sending waves of spray across the rafts. Moments later, the first hoist cable descended. Salvation had arrived. At 6:55 p.m., the survivors were lifted aboard the patrol ship INS Samrat. As they crossed the deck, medics wrapped each of them in foil blankets. The wind howled, sirens blared, but all anyone could hear was the same question: is everyone alive? When Aarav stepped off the final rescue raft, he looked back at the horizon. All he saw was a faint orange glow where the aircraft's tail had disappeared. He whispered thank you to the sea, not for mercy, but for letting them prove themselves. Within hours, aviation investigators arrived. The black boxes were recovered by divers the next morning. Inside the briefing room at Mumbai Airport, a somber silence filled the air as Captain Aarav, Leena, and the rest of the crew waited for debriefing. The DGCA lead investigator, Rajiv Mehta, entered holding the preliminary report. "We're still analyzing data, but it looks like a dual-engine flameout caused by multiple bird strikes. Birds?" Aarav frowned. "We were at 34,000 feet. "Yes," Mehta replied. "A migratory flock, possibly disoriented by offshore flares from illegal oil rigs." "You hit them head-on," Leena exhaled. "That explains the simultaneous compressor stalls." The investigator nodded. "Both engines ingested debris within seconds. You lost all thrust, total electrical failure followed. You glided for almost 22 minutes over open ocean and ditched at 140 knots. The aircraft stayed intact long enough for full evacuation." He looked up. "Captain Khanna, that's beyond remarkable." But Aarav shook his head. "It wasn't just me. Every checklist, every drill, it all mattered today. By morning, the entire world knew." Headlines everywhere read, "Miracle on the Arabian Sea. 168 survive ocean crash." News outlets played audio clips from the black box. The cockpit voice recorder captured every word in chilling clarity, alarms blaring, systems failing, yet the voices inside steady and professional. Aarav, "Both engines out. We're gliding." Leena, "Restart unsuccessful." "Deploying RAT. Maintain control." There was no panic, no shouting. Just trained voices doing their duty. Experts across the world called it one of the most precise emergency ditchings ever executed. Days later, survivors shared their stories. An elderly woman told reporters, "A young crew member tied my vest for me. She said, 'You'll see the sun again.' Ma'am." I didn't believe her, but here I am. A father of two added, "When we hit the water, they kept everyone calm. No one pushed, no one screamed. We trusted them." Bilal, the trainee who dove into the sea to retrieve a drifting raft, was hailed a hero. "I just did what Captain said," he told cameras. "No one gets left behind. That's all that mattered." 2 weeks later, the official findings were released. Cause: simultaneous bird strikes causing dual-engine failure. Crew response: textbook emergency handling and communication. Outcome: 168 survivors, no fatalities. The report ended with one line that aviation students would quote for years. Professionalism under pressure prevented tragedy from becoming catastrophe. Captain Aarav read those words quietly in his hotel room. Outside, waves rolled onto the Mumbai shoreline. He turned to Leena. "People call it a miracle," he said. "But it was discipline and grace working together." She smiled faintly. Maybe that's what miracles really are. A month later, a newly serviced Airbus A321, call sign Hope Air 901, stood ready for departure. The same crew had volunteered to fly again. Cameras lined the runway fence as Aarav and Leena walked toward the aircraft in fresh uniforms. A reporter shouted, "Captain, are you afraid to fly again?" He smiled. "No. The sky gave us a test and we learned to respect it." Inside the cockpit, systems hummed to life. Leena placed a small badge beside the throttles. "Flight 327, we survived." "Ready?" Aarav asked. She nodded. "Always." The engines roared. The aircraft began to roll. And as it lifted off into the golden light, Aarav looked down at the Arabian Sea, the same water that had once almost claimed them. He whispered to himself, "You gave us fear, and we gave you faith." And somewhere in the clouds above, sunlight broke through not as a miracle, but as a reminder that courage, when shared, becomes hope. Weeks had passed since the miraculous ditching of Flight 327. The world had moved on with news cycles, but for the survivors, crew, and pilots, the event had left indelible marks, both emotional and professional. Captain Aarav Khanna returned home to Mumbai, but his mind was still hovering over the Arabian Sea. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the tail of the aircraft skimming the water, the life rafts clustered together, and the faces of passengers holding on to hope. "We didn't just survive," he said quietly to Leena during a debrief with airline officials. "We learned what true preparation and teamwork can do under pressure." Leena nodded, her hands folded over her lap. Every checklist, every training drill. It was like rehearsing for this moment our entire careers. Flight 327 became an instant case study in aviation schools worldwide. The DGCA and international aviation bodies quickly implemented reforms. Dual-engine bird strike protocols were updated. Pilots were trained on gliding. Procedures from unprecedented altitudes, over open ocean. Enhanced RAT systems became standard in newer Airbus models to ensure minimal, hydraulic and electrical, power during complete engine loss. Passenger evacuation drills were revised to emphasize speed, efficiency, and calm leadership, inspired by the actions of Flight 327's cabin crew. Aarav and Leena were invited to give lectures at aviation academies across India. Students hung on every word as the captain explained how discipline, communication, and calm under stress saved 168 lives. "Fear is natural," Aarav told a hall of aspiring pilots. "But discipline turns fear into focus. And focus turns disaster into survival." The survivors carried their own legacies. Bilal, the trainee crew member who had dived into the sea to retrieve a drifting raft, was awarded national recognition. "I was just doing what my captain said," he explained during an award ceremony. "But now I understand sometimes small acts of courage ripple into something greater than yourself." Other passengers formed support groups advocating for flight safety awareness. Mothers who had clutched children during the ditching now spoke publicly about the importance of following crew instructions. The story of Flight 327 became a symbol of human resilience and calm, leadership under extreme stress. Documentaries, news articles, and viral videos spread the tale of Flight 327 around the world. Headlines like 168 lives saved, the miracle flight of the Arabian Sea, discipline, teamwork, and calm, how Flight 327 survived, became case studies in not just aviation, but leadership, crisis management, and teamwork. Aarav and Leena often watched these features quietly, avoiding public attention. "It wasn't us," Aarav would say. "It was every hand, every heart aboard that flight." For Aarav, the incident reshaped his relationship with flying. He now approached each flight not just as a routine procedure, but as a trust exercise with the lives in his hands. Leena, who had once doubted her ability to handle high-stakes emergencies, now carried confidence and humility in equal measure. She became an advocate for crew mental health, emphasizing the need to train both technical skills and emotional resilience. Even the passengers learned a universal truth that in moments of extreme peril, human courage and cooperation can outweigh the worst of nature. 1 month after the incident, Aarav and Leena were cleared to fly again. This time it was Flight 901, a replacement Airbus A321, identical to the ill-fated Flight 327. As they taxied for takeoff, Aarav glanced at the vast Arabian Sea below. "It's still beautiful," he whispered. Leena smiled faintly. "And still unforgiving. But now we know how to survive it." The aircraft lifted smoothly into the morning sun, wings slicing the golden light. Every passenger who had boarded that day, including crew and special passengers selected for the commemorative flight, felt a silent reverence for the plane and those who had survived the first time. "They didn't wait for heroes," Aarav murmured. "They became them." And for the world watching, Flight 327 was more than a story. It was a lesson in hope, preparation, and the human spirit. Training simulations worldwide. Flight 327's ditching scenario was integrated into simulators globally, teaching pilots to glide long distances, manage rat deployment, and coordinate evacuations under extreme conditions. Cabin crew protocols. Crew training now included passenger psychology under high-stress ocean emergencies, ensuring calm leadership during actual events. Passenger awareness campaigns. Airlines introduced pre-flight briefings inspired by Flight 327's crew, emphasizing teamwork and attentiveness to instructions. The incident became part of aviation lore, a rare convergence of human skill, discipline, and fortune. Years later, Aarav stood by the window in a quiet hotel room overlooking the sea. He could almost see the yellow life rafts floating in the distance, carrying every soul alive that day. Leena joined him. "Do you ever think about it?" she asked. "All the time," Aarav replied. "Not because I fear it could happen again, but because I remember how hope rises when people refuse to give in to panic." The Arabian Sea stretched endlessly below, silent, vast, and serene. And above it, a single aircraft flew, a reminder that courage, preparation, and teamwork can turn even the most harrowing disaster into a story of survival and hope. Flight 327 would forever be remembered, not just as a miracle, but as a testament to what humanity can achieve under pressure.